Hi, everybody. I accidentally scheduled this live 12 hours later. And so I may not have anybody in here, but Kai and I are still here. We thought we would still pop on and see if any of our buddies join us. And I can see a few people watching. So good morning, everybody, or good evening, everybody in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a pretty miserable Friday here in Australia where I am. It's raining and it's cold, and we are lucky that we are all rugged up at home. So I've got Kai here next to me here, and on my other side, I have Mr. Spooky, who's fast asleep. So they're here to have a chat with us today about the Forensic Unicorn series. So we are now doing part 2. Now, I know that criminality is live right now too, so I appreciate I'm possibly not going to have a lot of Delphi viewers. Oh, hey, Dita. Thanks for joining. I may not have a lot of the Delphi community in here now, but I hope that people will catch the replay, and I will be making all of the lives into actual video content where we clip some of the conversations and things that we're having in the chat, just for the people who aren't in the chat and want to see. Oh, yay. Hey, Kelly. Hey, TJ. Everybody's come to see if they can learn more about sadism today, because that is the topic. So I would have waited and not gone live, but I know that criminality's lives go for a long time because they're doing transcripts and deposition readings and things like that. So I don't like to kind of come online at the same time as everybody or as other creators, but sometimes I have no choice because I have a very limited window where I can do this without children interrupting and without it being the middle of the night for me. So, or the middle of the night for you guys. So lovely to see you. And hopefully we'll get some more people joining us over the course of the next little while. It's partly my fault because I accidentally scheduled this at 11 p.m. my time instead of 11 a.m. So there also wouldn't have been a number of correct notifications coming through. But anyway, working on my attention to detail when it comes to organizing and scheduling. So apologies for anyone who doesn't get the notification and doesn't get to join. But, you know, we do lives so often on Daisy Asks. So even if you miss this live, you can always join the next one. And the Forensic Unicorn series is going to go for a while. Because there's a lot to talk about. So what is the Forensic Unicorn series for the people who are just tuning in? It's basically the series where I discuss why I believe that Richard Allen would be a forensic unicorn, literally unheard of, if he were actually the offender of the Delphi murders. So anyone who's been following my channel knows that I am a clinical psychologist with a massive interest in true crime, and I've been particularly focused on the Delphi case over, goodness, the last year, but particularly online in the last 6 months. And I started to create content and a website and post prolifically to support advocacy for Richard Allen, but also justice for the victims of this crime, Abby and Libby. I just felt like a lot of the information that was circulating was misinterpreted at times. And so I thought that putting a psychologist lens on this case could be helpful, and particularly a case that really does center a lot on psychology. Now, I always have my disclaimer that whilst I am a clinical psychologist and I do speak from that understanding and expertise, I'm not speaking on this channel within the context of being a clinical psychologist. So I'm not here to diagnose anyone, to treat anyone, and I'm not here as an expert opinion on this case, but more so as somebody with an interest in true crime who also has quite a lot of knowledge and experience in psychology to basically inform some of the discussion points that we have here. So that's a little brief intro. I have a full disclaimer that I'll pop on the screen in a minute. I'm not going to read through it because I know everybody's sick of it. Well, at least I am. So let's add the presentation to the stage. Now, I may hop on and off camera because I'm going to read some stuff as well. But yeah, I will definitely hop off the camera if I'm distracting anyone. Kai's usually pretty good. He does sometimes put his tail in the screen. Oh, allergy season, Dita, that's no good. And TJ, switching topics, I don't actually know what the topic is on the other channel today. So, yeah, I haven't been watching. I popped in very briefly, so I'm not sure what's being discussed, but we're here to discuss psychology today. And I know it's going to be a small crowd, but I think that it is a wonderful crowd. I know some of you that come and join all of my lives is sometimes just a core group, but I think we have some wonderful discussions. And I really want this live to be kind of interactive because I think this is super interesting. And I think you probably do too, because, we're all true crime consumers here. So we probably all do find it quite interesting to understand forensic psychology. Oh, frozen tundra soon. No more allergies, Dita. Okay, goodness. Oh, hey, Nicole. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Nicole is one of our mods, so great to have you here. And hopefully some more will pop by. I totally understand when there are scheduling conflicts. So I totally hope that others might pop in a little bit later, either after criminality's finished or catch the replay. Okay, so let's get into this. I've been excited about doing this one, and I was going to do it yesterday, and then we got it delayed. So let's get into it now. Now, my little tongue in cheek. So, we do sometimes use humor on this channel, not to obviously trivialize the case, because this case is certainly not trivial by any stretch. These two beautiful girls, and my heart just drops as soon as I see their faces, were the victims of this horrendous crime. And there is nothing trivial or funny about that, of course. And so they're always front and center. However, when we're talking about some of this stuff, sometimes adding a little bit of tongue in cheek and sarcasm and snark just helps us to kind of plunge through the really dark stuff. And I think it also helps to capture the attention of people who may not initially have a huge interest in the case. Just hearing volumes and volumes of evidence and transcripts can be really overwhelming. I know it is for me. And I'm really hyper focused on this case, but for me, reading through all the documents feels a lot. So sometimes I do try to add a touch of entertainment and humor to it in order to make it more digestible. But please never ever see that as us trivializing this absolutely abhorrent case. And these two girls are front and center. They live in my mind and in my heart. And I always get almost teary when I start talking about them, but I really want to honor them in every possible way. So this is what we're going to talk about today: the sadistic offender profile and why Richard Allen is the inverse of that. Okay, so I believe Rick Allen is the opposite of the sadistic offender profile. And as I've mentioned before, again, yeah, Nicole, sometimes you do have to laugh to keep from crying, for sure. Absolutely. And particularly in this case, it's just so sad. Yeah, I get shivers even thinking about it. It's such a sad case. And it's sad for Abby and Libby and their families. And if you believe that Rick is wrongly convicted, which I know a lot of people on my channel do, some don't, but if you do believe that, then it's also incredibly sad for him and Kathy and his family as well. I guess either way, it's sad for Kathy and his family, but there are a lot of innocent victims of this case, and also innocent victims of the misinformation and disinformation as well around this case. So this channel is very much a channel dedicated to compassion and empathy. And so when we do snark, it is generally only going to be at the investigation, not at individuals who were victims of this case, either primarily or secondarily. And we also don't snark at each other unless it's completely in jest and consensual. So Scott knows there will be always a little bit of snark towards Scott, but he knows it's all friendly jest. Hey, Cryptex, thank you so much for popping by. And yeah, definitely catch the replay because I think this one is an interesting one. And yeah, I hope I can do it justice too. Cryptex's channel is amazing for anybody who wants to see somebody else who has a really nice community with lots of critical analysis and open-mindedness. Cryptex is one of those channels, one of my favorite Delphi channels. Even though Cryptex does think Rick is possibly involved, he definitely has a really open-minded, nuanced kind of way of looking at the information. So we really appreciate Cryptex. Okay, guys. So I guess where I'm going to try and pull some humor in to kind of soften the blows of talking about sadism is I mentioned we're going to assess ourselves against the sadistic profile. And I mentioned this in my community post, and I didn't put an emoji at first, so I think maybe it could have been misread. But essentially, the upside down face emoji was to represent the fact that I don't believe anybody in our community is sadistic. Actually, sadism, however, is linked to trolling behavior online. Now, again, nobody in our community, in Daisy Us community, has been a troll. We may have had the odd troll, too many words that sound similar in this case, early on. However, we haven't had any. So I really don't think, and even the trolls we had, look, it was harmless, kind of silly stuff. So I don't know if that's sort of the sadistic element of trolling. That would be more when people are putting down others, humiliating them, smearing them, making people feel bad for no good reason. That's essentially what we're looking at when we're talking about sadism. Anyway, so in the context of Rick Allen, we are going to try and discuss today with this crime. Oh, Spooky just did the stinkiest fart. My goodness, Spooky. Yucky. Sorry, guys. That's disgusting. And now he's stretching. Okay. Sorry, guys, for that interference, but it was like, next level. You can probably see on my face. Okay. So we're going to talk about why the Delphi murders are most likely a sadistic crime. And I think most of us would agree on that point, no matter what side of the equation we are on in terms of Rick's guilt. And we're going to talk about who you'd have to be to do this. And we're going to talk about trait clusters in sadism and psychopathy. We're going to talk about the inverse of that, so the opposite of that, which I believe is Rick Allen style, the internalizer profile, and why this mismatch matters for Delphi. Now, I said very early on, Grandma, so good to see you. Oh, I think you will like this topic, Grandma. So if you can't catch it now, definitely catch the replay. Because, yeah, I think this is a topic that a lot of the people who are my kind of core group of chatters and in this community would be really interested in, because I know we're all very psychologically minded. So it's very psychological heavy. Gosh, that didn't make sense. Psychologically kind of focused today, as opposed to some of our deep dives into digital analysis. This is an area that is probably something that comes more naturally to me, but lots more pressure then as well, which is why I feel a little bit more nervous when I do these ones, because I feel a bit more pressure to really get it right. Whereas when I did the digital forensic stuff, I can be like, I'm not an expert. I don't need to know this. Look, I'm not an expert in forensic psychology. I did work in the forensic system briefly, and I loved it. I worked in a maximum security correctional center, well, minimum, maximum, and medium security. And I worked with men, on all ends of the offense sort of spectrum. Oh, yeah, Grandma, definitely listen while you're in bed, although hopefully it doesn't give you nightmares. I kind of feel like most of us in the true crime community don't have nightmares from this stuff too often, though, I guess, because we're kind of used to it. So I worked in a correctional center as a clinical psychologist. That was my first job out of university after my clinical training. And I knowingly chose that because, as anyone who talks to me here knows I've always been interested in true crime. And a lot of the offenders I worked with, though, would not, I believe, be classified as sadistic offenders. The majority of the offenders I worked with were, vulnerable people who had developed antisocial traits in relation to trauma and difficult life experiences, probably mismanaged neurodivergence and things like that. Oh, wow, Grandma, you used to work in end of life care. Wow. Yeah, I've always thought that would be um such special work to do, but also, yeah, very, very heartbreaking. But yeah, I think as people who work in clinical settings, we do have to compartmentalize a lot of the time. Yeah. So I often think it's a little bit of an unusual trait, but a lot of psychologists have to both be highly empathetic, but also highly able to compartmentalize. We have to be able to, hear really traumatic, difficult stories and then move on and do the next thing. And that sometimes feels a little bit alien, but it's the only way really to work in this field. Oh, it's getting super cold here today, guys. We're only a few days away from summer, but I'm cold, so I'm just going to rug up. I'm going to put my blankie on. How are you going, Mr. Kai? Yeah, Mr. Spooky, please keep your bum away from me. Goodness, the stink. Okay, so what was I saying? I was saying, yeah, so the offenders I worked with, I wouldn't say that the majority were sadistic offenders. I worked probably with the odd person who had engaged in maybe a little bit more sadistic related crimes, but majority of it was reactive violence. And so reactive violence is a lot of the time I've got really angry with someone, they've really upset me, and I've lashed out. And of course, we're not minimizing that. That's still violence and aggression, but it's slightly different to what we're talking about in the case of the Delphi murders. Okay, anyway, let's get to it. Oh, one last point I wanted to make was when I first heard about Rick's psychological history and psychiatric history, and the more that I saw of Rick in the interrogation interviews and hearing more in terms of, the phone calls, the more that I had this impression of him as being far more similar to the clientele that I work with now. And the clientele that I work with now is largely the population who are highly sensitive and highly empathic. So I work, majority of my caseload now would be neurodivergent, highly sensitive people, a lot of the time hyper empathic people with OCD who have a high sort of ethical code, scrupulosity. And so realistically, most of the people that I work with are highly guilt prone and hate hurting people. They constantly apologize even for existing or having a boundary. And so Rick really reminded me of those and those people. And of course, I've never met Rick, and I'm only commenting based on, the publicly available information that we've had. But everything kind of just drew me back to that same sort of intuitive, I suppose, perception of Rick. And so to me, that is exactly what is the inverse internalizer profile. So we'll talk more about that as we go along. I had intended this to be, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours long, but we may have to break it up further because we're already 18 minutes in and I haven't actually got to any of the content. I'm just sort of setting the scene. So definitely ask questions, make comments. I can see more people kind of coming in. So really appreciate the ongoing support for the channel, everyone. We did reach 1,000 subs last night, just after the live stream. Super exciting. I think some of the subs, though, are kind of clicks and things. So sometimes that happens when we use YouTube promotions. So I think, we've got a modest audience, but I hope that we can continue to increase the audience size as well, because I think that these issues that we discuss here on this channel are important. I think there are lots of wonderful Delphi channels, and there's lots of wonderful true crime channels and psychology channels. And I think what we're doing here is trying to integrate psychology, true crime, Delphi in particular, and I always sort of say that this channel is about contextualizing the Delphi evidence, as is the Richard Allen Justice Project website. I think that's a little bit of uniqueness that we offer here, and I'm proud of that. Yes, yay. 1,000 subs. It's amazing. So we are officially monetized as well. And most people know I don't do this for the money. I do this because it's incredibly meaningful and fulfilling for me, but definitely exciting to be able to reach that milestone too. So we might do a little celebration on the weekend. I'm just waiting to hear back from Dee Dee. She's been a bit MIA because I really do owe a lot of my initial kind of spark of interest on YouTube to Diana, my wonderful friend. So anyway, let's get into it, guys. So who here thinks that the Delphi murders are a sadistic crime? I can do one of our polls. Give me a sec. Let me actually open up YouTube on the other screen and then we can do our polls. Oh, Grandma. Oh my goodness. You are so generous. Oh goodness. Thank you so much. That's just beautiful. I'm speechless. Like I don't even expect anybody to send super chats or any of that, but they're obviously always appreciated. Thank you so much. It's just so beautiful. Oh goodness. Making my heart feel really happy. Okay, so what was I doing? I'm going on to my own channel to put a poll. We've lost a few of the people. They came in and then they left again, but that's okay. We'll be here for a while, so hopefully people will continue to join and catch the replay as well. This is pretty content heavy as well, so I know that sometimes may also impact people's engagement as well. So take your time, definitely. Okay, so I'm going to put in, do you believe the Delphi murders are a sadistic crime? No, thank you. Thank you, Nicole. I try to be a good human. I do. I definitely do. So thank you. Thank you for seeing that. Thank you for everyone in here. I mean, goodness. I know the people in here right now, like TJ, Dita, Nicole, Grandma, you guys have all been such solid supporters. I kind of say it's like my ladies' night group here. You guys are awesome. And there's many more who are watching the replay. I can't name everybody, but the ones in here right now, you guys are wonderful and you make this whole thing easy to do. Oh, hey, Donald. Welcome. Just a few days till Donald's birthday. Another lovely supporter of the channel. Oh, Shay, hey, another lovely supporter of the channel too. Oh, love seeing all of you guys here. I know some of my my buddies may not be here because they are on different time frames as well. And I know, as I said, that there are other things kind of going on at the moment too. And so I appreciate that we can't be in multiple places at once. So, okay, so our poll. So we've got majority thinking that it's a sadistic crime. So anyone who doesn't think it's a sadistic crime, please let us know as well. Remember, having a different opinion in here is never a problem. Okay, so yeah, let us know. Okay, so the reason I think it's a sadistic crime, well, let's get to that. I've got too many windows open. So I guess the indicators, oh, hey, USA Libertarian, another one of my beautiful regular people that come in here. Oh, lovely to see you. Okay, so the reason I think it's a sadistic crime, I'm actually going to go off camera now. Kai, we're going to go off camera. Say bye-bye, everybody. Yeah, we'll come back on later, but just because I'm going to read and stuff as I do this. I always do that. I take myself off the stage. Give me a sec. Turn off camera. And let's make this full screen. Okay, so I didn't even really like putting the big tree limb in the picture because it's just, it's a horrible reminder of just how awful that crime scene is. But I think that there are a lot of indicators of sadism here. I guess, first of all, what is sadism? That's probably the best place to start in terms of sort of determining whether it's a sadistic crime scene. So basically, sadistic people or sadism is related to the enjoyment of harm, the enjoyment of seeing other people's harm, causing harm. Yeah, basically kind of the opposite of probably most people in here. So some of the indicators are callousness, enjoyment of other people's pain, so pleasure in suffering or humiliation, thrill in dominance or cruelty. Definitely lots of dominance related themes, control, power, what we would call instrumental aggression, so calculated, not reactive, as we mentioned before, goal directed. It's about achieving a goal. And in this case, a lot of the time, the goal is humiliation and power and pain, impulsivity, sensation seeking, manipulation, deceit. Yeah, basically, really just low guilt and a lot of violence essentially. Now, if we think about the Delphi murders and Abby and Libby and how the crimes occurred, and certainly what we see at the crime scene, it definitely is consistent in my mind with a sadistic crime. The core of the sadistic. Oh, sorry, what am I saying? Sorry, the guy's just got up and he's like rubbing my head as we're talking. But yeah, it shows the Delphi scene of the crime shows multiple sadistic behaviors. Things like the fact that the bodies are staged in a way where it's particularly humiliating, particularly Libby's body being unclothed. The blood all over her face and her hands, the positioning of the bodies, um, yeah, the staging with the limbs. It just it seems very consistent with control, intention, and fantasy driven behavior. And if we look at sort of the forensic examiner's suggestions around how the girls past, it sounds incredibly scary and painful and traumatizing. And yeah, just I'm getting those shivers again. I don't know if anyone else gets that, but whenever I connect with something really sad, I get this sort of like shivers, particularly in my legs. It's just a really like visceral feeling. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've just noticed that. I never used to really be in my body very much. I'm very overly in my head a lot of the time, but trying to be a little bit more body focused and pay attention to my body. And I really notice now more visceral reactions when I look at or talk about this stuff. So I don't know if the rest of you notice those visceral reactions as well. So when staging is present, it's almost never reactive. I mean, unless the staging is to attempt to cover up. So, if there was reactive violence and then it appears like a cover up because they want to make it seem like, a robbery or something, that sort of staging is different. Um, yeah, TJ, psychic effects. Yeah, you know what? I never really used to believe in a lot of, I guess, more of the sort of spirituality and psychic based aspects of life. I was a bit of a naysayer. But interestingly, Ash, who is my good friend, who you guys have heard on the panel, is very into that and has really opened my eyes. And then I sort of had a little bit of a look at some different stuff, had a lot of loss in my life. And so definitely looked into like near death experiences. And there's some amazing research as well, like with neuroscience as well. So, yeah, yeah, TJ, definitely. I hate to say like I'm hyper empathic because it kind of sounds like you're kind of virtue signaling, but yeah, I actually spent a lot of my life worrying I wasn't empathetic enough. I didn't feel enough, which is not uncommon for people who are neurodivergent, not because they're not empathetic, but because they overanalyze everything. And so for me, I'd be like, well, I should feel this pure empathy and I should feel it in a certain way. And if I don't feel it like that, then I mustn't be empathetic. Or if I have negative thoughts or feelings towards others, then I must not be empathetic. And I think it's a really key message. I'm going off track from sadism, which is the opposite essentially of empathy, but I think so. It's still useful. It's the sort of inverse. Empathetic people actually have, experience all different emotions strongly, not just positive emotions. So, the extreme feelings of betrayal or sadness, I feel, can also be related to my empathy too. Oh, hey, Chair, lovely to see you. Thanks for joining. We're just getting started on the key topic because I love to go off on a lot of tangents. Yeah, grammar, you learnt to mask. Yeah, and a lot of people do, right? They mask and they try to hide the intensity of their emotions because society says don't have too many emotions, basically. I think I always quote Taylor Swift, there's nothing, no one likes a mad woman, and I think sometimes, I think that certainly is how we get painted, and not just women, men as well, for having more extreme emotions. And yeah, I definitely, I think you guys can all tell from being involved in my community, I have very strong emotions. So I have a lot of empathy towards others and compassion and care. I have a lot of joy and excitability, but I also do feel very sad sometimes. I do feel very um, embarrassed and shameful at times too, and I do feel my anger more now than I ever had before, because similar to grammar, I would probably have just internalized anger and masked it, and all that did was create more shame within me. So now I definitely set boundaries, but sometimes people can see boundary setting as aggression or hostility, but it isn't. There's a difference. So hostility and aggression is more about entitlement and on one extreme it's entitlement, on this other extreme, if we look at sort of sadistic hostility and aggression, that's more about enjoying humiliating and upsetting other people. Whereas I think most of us highly empathic people, our anger comes out when our boundaries are stretched and we're saying enough, it's not okay, this is a threat to my nervous system. And so generally my anger comes out in the face of betrayal, to be honest. Betrayal and undermining, and unfair smearing, to be honest. So, yeah. Yeah, totally important to express our feelings. Anger is not a bad emotion. Anger, I mean, no emotion is, but I know anger is the one that gets a bad rap, particularly for us women. And it's not. It's basically it's similar to anxiety. It's saying there's a threat and I need to act. And if I don't act when I'm feeling, a threat to myself, well, then I'm ending up actually usually soaking that in. And that to me becomes our inner critic. And I have a vicious inner critic. So, like, nothing anyone can say to me online is going to be any worse than what I've already said to myself. And I'm really working on that. And part of working on that is setting boundaries and not allowing myself to soak in, unfair smears or unfair treatment from other people. So, being highly emotional and empathic is not a bad thing. I am, TJ. I am. And thank you. I always love having a chat with you guys because you guys, I feel like we're all so similar. We're on such a similar kind of page when it comes to this stuff. So, and that's where I try to like pull in a lot of psychology stuff. And even though we go off the track of Delphi, I think it's relevant. I think it's super relevant here because I actually think that a lot of the key parties in this case were probably and are probably empaths. I mean, I get that very strong vibe around the girls. And I know that, often when we talk of victims of crime, we want to say positive things, but I don't say it just as a platitude. I really get the impression that Libby and Abby were incredibly, oh, hey, Lisa. I get the impression that Abby and Libby were both incredibly loyal, empathetic, wise girls, gentle girls, because you see that from the quality of their friendship and just even the quality of their relationships with others. I think with Libby, you even look at the phone entries, the names she has, like best aunt ever and daddy o and is it best sis? But like there's just so much warmth there, and even her actions, according to I guess my theory of what happens in the Bridge Guy video, to me are indicative of deep loyalty and care for her best friend. They stuck together till the end, and Abby just seems like such a gentle soul. In the way that she's described, but also again, just I think it's again you get that sort of vibe about people, right? And I just see this beautiful loyalty and warmth between the girls and the pictures, and yeah, really beautiful souls. And I know we wouldn't be on here smearing victims anyway, even if they weren't. But I don't want this to seem like a platitude that we're saying because we want to be nice to the victims. I really get that sense here. I really feel a really strong sense that these girls were just such beautiful souls. And it's terrible for any soul to leave this earth the way that they did. But I think, yeah, the sadness just is sort of exponentially multiplied when you think of just how brave and loyal and kind those girls were. And I believe Kathy Allen also, to me, she presents very much with the profile of being an empath as well, love of animals, very, very kind and caring, very there for a husband who had serious mental health issues as well. Oh, no worries, Grandma. Yeah, no, you get your rest as well, okay? And we've got plenty more where this came from. We'll do plenty more chats about psychology and Delphi and psychology alone as well, because I know some people are just interested in more psychology related content. So come join us again. Always so lovely to see you. Yeah, so I do believe Kathy Allen, definitely has a lot of the sort of features of being highly empathic as well, love of animals, support of a husband that has very serious mental health issues, and, patience and care and loyalty. She's never smeared anyone. Just the grace with which she spoke in the documentary and how she's handled herself, has just been really beautiful. I actually think Andy Baldwin, another empath as well. He really, really sort of screams empathy in the way that he operates as a legal professional. I think the rest of the team too. I really think the defense team have that very nice aura about them, but I do definitely believe Andy Baldwin particularly. And I know this would be an unpopular opinion for those in our community that believe Rick is guilty, but and anyone who believes he's guilty, I believe that Rick Allen is also highly empathic, which I know when you hear that out of context is going to sound silly if you believe he's the murderer of Abby and Libby, but I don't. So I believe he's the inverse of sadism. Anyway, we've got off track. I think that's still a really interesting conversation, but let's get back to sadism. And thank you so much for showing up, everyone. I can see the numbers increasing and the viewers increasing. And anyone lurking, feel free to join in and chat with us. It's a really safe community. And anyone who wants to listen to this without all of the chatter, I will either edit this video or I will create short form of all of my videos moving forward so that you guys can watch it without the chatter. But I also really love engaging with the chat as we talk through this stuff. I think that's what makes this community really, really beautiful. So it looks like about 70% of us now think that it's a sadistic crime, and the other 30% don't. So that's interesting. And I'm really curious about what divides our opinion there. So yeah, as you can tell, I believe that there are strong elements of sadism. Again, I'm not an expert in sadism, so please don't think I'm going to pull rank here and say I'm right. But I do definitely see a lot of aspects of sadism here. But really curious what those who don't. I wonder if it's to do with people feeling as though the sticks were just sort of an attempt to cover up the bodies as opposed to any specific staging, and the positions of the bodies were just again to do with the rushing, not redressing and things like that. It's hard to know, or destroying evidence and things like that. But yeah, personally, I do believe that there are indicators of control. I do believe that there was a gun, not used obviously in hurting the girls, but in controlling them. There is staging elements, there's sexual symbolization, there's domination, and there's fear prolonging. So even though I do believe that the crimes occurred in a fairly brief window, within that window, there was a lot of suffering, a lot of fear, and a lot of control. Getting the girls over the creek. I would imagine one of the girls had to watch the other one be murdered. The redressing as well. I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the way that the clothes were removed seems like it would have been voluntary removal of the clothes, rather than them being ripped off as well. Yeah, the reason I think there's a gun, I guess the round being there, but also I do wonder if that is what did help to control the girls and stop them from running. When you watch the Bridge Guy video on incredibly slow speed, there is that sort of clenching of Abby's hand after he said, like after Bridge Guy sort of is in not in focus because we don't see him, but close to them in proximity. So I don't know if that's because she's seen a gun. I do believe the girls do try to slide down that hill and get away from him, but I do think that that's potentially what stopped them from fully running. Of course, as well, they could they could have not been running because they were frozen as in fear as well. But yeah, sort of feel as though they tried to sort of get down the hill and then something stopped them, whether it's another person that's there or whether it's a gun or both. I don't know. Oh yeah, TJ. I've unfortunately I have seen the crime scene photos. I was just saying yesterday that somebody had put them on Twitter again. So I have come across the crime scene photos previously as well, and yeah, but I'm not 100% on exactly how they look because it's that sort of that angle I suppose is hard to really tell, and the quality isn't super high, which is not a bad thing for me. I don't know that I want to see, particularly the girls' faces in high quality in that position. But yeah. Yeah, Kelly, you don't really believe the bridge guy video? Yeah, I know that it divides people a lot. Definitely. Yeah. Look, personally, I do think that the bridge guy video is her covertly recording. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the jeans in the water, TJ. Okay, not the crime scene pictures. Ah, okay. So that would suggest, yeah, potentially them being ripped off then. Oh, goodness. Yeah, just doesn't bear thinking about. But I guess, yeah, the manner of death as well, it would have been painful. And I hate even saying that because just imagine for the families having to know that the girls suffered. It's one thing that they had to be murdered and killed at such a young age, but that they suffered. And yeah, Lisa, I don't believe the beachy video, but I don't care what others think. Absolutely. Absolutely. And Dita doesn't believe the video is anything more than happenstance. Yeah, look, everybody's welcome to their own opinions in here, guys, as you know. So yeah, I definitely don't ever want anyone to think that their opinions are not valued here as well. They were again yesterday, TJ. So somebody had posted them in response, I believe, to I think it may have been in response to a post by All Eyes. So it's not All Eyes who posted them. Don't get me wrong. It was somebody who was trying to prove that Rick is guilty by posting those pictures again on Twitter, which is, yeah, to me, that's not necessary at all. Oh, hey, Charles. No signs of rage or torture. Yeah, I don't think it's reactive violence. I agree. But torture, I mean, it was to me, in my opinion, it's a brief time frame. But I think that from what the medical examiner said, that they wouldn't have died immediately, and so there still would have been a lot of fear and pain. So anyone who, if we believe the I guess the time frame that we've been told. And I do tend to believe that, not because we've been told it by the state, because I don't tend to just believe things that we're told by law enforcement in this case, but I guess I do believe that the girls, are abducted and taken across the creek, and I do believe that the crime scene is where the bodies are found, but totally open to everybody else's ideas as well. The reason I believe that is based on my assessment of the phone data, but again, that's based on the phone itself, not the person. So the phone could have been left there. That's also a possibility as well. Okay, so sadistic crime, it seems like 2/3 of us think it was, and 1/3 are not sure. So that's okay. Let's move on though, because we're going to talk about now more around the qualities or the attributes we might expect that the offender would have. Now, profiling hasn't always got the best rap, and part of that's because a lot of profiling has been done more from a theoretical stance rather than historically, I suppose, rather than necessarily an evidence-based stance. I believe that's changing. And again, I'm not a forensic psychologist, so I haven't studied this in depth, but I believe now there is more of a leaning towards like using people's previous what am I trying to say? Sorry, I got distracted. I just realized I hadn't had the comments on the stage. Sorry, everyone. I'm popping them on the stage now for anyone who wants to see them on the screen. Yeah, I believe that forensic psychology now and profiling now is more based on statistics of previous crimes. I think in the past, though, and some of these ideas still dominate, there were profile types that were based more on theory. So they would piece together things from the crime scene and then kind of make a theory. But now it is based more on, like Charles is saying, similar crimes and offenders, but it hasn't always been, Charles. So you hear these I'm trying to think what they call prototypes or whatever, profile types that sometimes don't align with research. So just got to be wary of that. So that's why when they used to say, well, profilers don't get it right much better than the average person, and think it's based on that a lot of the time, because there are certainly clusters in the research, and that's what we're going to look at today. Okay, let's keep going. So I love that we have lots of different opinions in here, everybody. So never ever feel afraid to bring up your opinion. No matter what opinion you have in here is allowed. This community is not about policing people's opinions. The only thing we'll ever police here as mods is, and as myself here, is if people are being mean to each other. That's the only thing. And when I say mean, it needs to be, an absolutely, unkind, unnecessary statements. But having a difference of opinion is never going to be disregarded in here. Yeah, sometimes we call out misinformation too as well. But I guess I don't do that so much in this community because, I usually will do it more when I've actually looked into something and really researched it. So if I don't know, I may disagree with you, but I'm not going to kind of challenge you on that, because that's not the point. This is a discussion, and this is about us all working together. It's not about trying to win a battle. So please never feel like you can't share your opinion in here. I think you guys already know that. I always say that this community definitely has a real mixture of opinions, and I love that. I love that. I say it every time, and I know people probably get sick of me saying it every time. That I'm so proud of that, because I think that just shows that there isn't a lot of bias in this community, and that people can see that I'm not here to attack people having their own autonomy. So again, I'm not controlling. We can tick that one off the list. I'm not sadistic. So Dita says, if these were sadistic killings and if there is any cover-up happening, could the sadist be getting pleasure from enforcing the cover-up? Absolutely. I mean, that's a sense of control, isn't it? They're getting away with this. Yeah. Lisa says, we're not all here to be in a cult. The cult of Daisy. You mean you're not joining the cult of Daisy? That's actually what the paid membership will be called, the cult of Daisy. Only joking. I'm being very silly here. And even if it were that, whenever I say, because I was like, oh, you know how it's hidden true crime, she calls them hidden gems, and I was like, well, my community can be the Daisies, and I'm like, I don't feel bad about that because it's not narcissistic, because I'm not actually Daisy. So I know people call me Daisy, but Daisy is my doggy, and she's the inspiration for me. She's not me. I wish I could be Daisy. She was just the most beautiful, brightest of sparks, and so resilient and loving and gentle, and she has a beautiful legacy, and that's why I have named the channel Daisy Asks. So Daisy is not me. So if you love Daisy, it doesn't mean you love me. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, okay, so people are agreeing. Charles, are you lolling at me because of my Daisy stories? You cannot judge. You have been putting cute little kittens purring on your channel. So cute, guys. The little kittens. My goodness, I love them. Please bring me more kittens. So the only thing that money that is earned from this channel will go towards is kittens. So don't worry, guys. Kittens and puppies. Okay. So I've got too many screens open, so give me a second. So just looking at our poll one more time. Yeah, so 2/3 think it's sadism. Oh, Charles, you had a doggy named Daisy too. Aw. Yeah, my little Daisy. She was so awesome. We called her Daisy Boo. Actually, she ended up being Daisy Boo. She was such a sweetheart. Okay, so let's look at sadism. Let's start to understand sadism, guys, together. And I actually was interested because I actually used to always muddle up sadism and masochism. Like I'd be like, which one's which again? I can't remember. Anyway, masochism is the opposite, not the opposite of sadism. It's basically the what would we say, the latch and key with sadism. So masochism is the enjoyment of experiencing pain, and sadism is the enjoyment of causing pain. So they're slightly different. Oh, Grandma's sharing the kittens. They're too cute not to share, right? Oh my goodness. I just want those kittens. I'd be visiting you all the time. If I lived near you, I'd be like, I want those kittens. Okay, anyway, kittens and sadism, very interesting topics that we're combining today, everyone. I was actually, I guess as a clin psych, we don't study a whole lot of forensic psych. So forensic psychologists and clinical psychologists actually overlap by about 70%. So the common themes are things like personality and abnormal psychology and social psychology. There's a lot that we have in common, and research and statistics. But one of the things that we didn't study in a lot of depth as clin psychs was specifically about sadism and psychopathy. So I remember doing a subject on personality, and we talked about Machiavellianism and narcissism, of course. But realistically, my knowledge of psychopathy and sadism was fairly limited from my studies. And then subsequently, when I worked in the forensic setting, I worked more as a clinician who was there to, monitor well-being of inmates. I wasn't one of the forensic team specifically, so I didn't really do the offender programs. I didn't do reports or assessments of offenders. So I was a little bit naive, I suppose, or a little bit of a layperson myself in understanding sadism, and particularly understanding the difference between sadism and psychopathy, because I think I've used them interchangeably before. Anyone know the difference between sadism and psychopathy? I literally had to look this up because I didn't. Full disclosure, it's not my area of expertise. Sadism versus psychopathy. Now, they overlap a lot, first of all, but they're not actually exactly the same thing. So let's pull this up because I don't want to get this wrong. Sadism and psychopathy. So sadism is about deriving pleasure from causing harm, but psychopathy is an indifference to others' feelings and a lack of empathy. So a sadist would not have empathy, but they may not necessarily have indifference, whereas they would actually enjoy it. A psychopath may have indifference, but they may also have pleasure as well. USA Libertarian says, sorry guys, I'm just going to pause for a second because there's someone else coming into the house, and I don't want them to be in the background. So give me 1 second. I'll be back. Have a think about that. Apologize for that, guys. Nana G's home. Sorry, I'm just moving rooms because Nana G doesn't need to be in the background of a YouTube video. So let's go back to USA Libertarian's comment. Give me 1 second. Okay, so USA Libertarian was saying, I'm always interested in why psychopaths who don't care about emotions would be sadistic. Yeah, so I think, so again, and I'm not going to sort of speak as an authority on this, but my understanding with psychopathy is they don't experience, like true psychopaths don't experience a whole kind of range of depth of emotions, right? So the opposite of the hyper-empathic characteristics we were talking about earlier in the stream. So they don't feel a lot. And so sometimes my understanding is that enacting this control and violence on other people gives them a bit of a thrill or a high, I suppose. So, I mean, I guess if we take it from a sort of psychology perspective, and here I'm just integrating my knowledge as a clin psych into it, we have 3 emotion systems. So anyone who's interested in this is the wonderful work of Paul Gilbert in compassion-focused therapy. And what he talks about is these 3 circles. Actually, let's pull it up. Give me a sec. I'm going to pop it on the screen. We're always diverting onto different things. I think you guys have come to to recognize that about me, and I hope that that is okay. But I think this is super interesting. This is one of the therapies that I absolutely love. Compassion focused therapy. It informs a lot of my practice. So let me just see if I can pop it on the screen, and it might help us to sort of understand the difference as well. But I'm just speaking out loud. Again, anyone who watches my channel knows that I hypothesize and speak out loud. So we will fact check and double check this after, and I'll have a look at what the research actually shows. But let's have a look at whether this might be relevant. Okay. So I'll put a link to this website that I'm about to show you as well in the comments afterwards if you'd like to learn more about compassion-focused therapy. Oh, night, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, catch the replay if you can, and we'll see you soon. So this is the 3 emotion systems, and these are sort of evolutionarily based emotion systems. So what we have is we have the threat system, and everyone kind of knows the threat system. That's the fight, flight, freeze system. But then we've also got the drive system. That's the incentive-focused system. It's about achieving and reward. So this would be more like the dopamine system. This would be more like the cortisol system. And then here we've got more the sort of endorphin system. What would we say? The oxytocin system. So this is more the affiliative, soothing, compassion-based system. So if we think about it, in psychopathy, there isn't a lot of this, right? They don't really feel threat. They're not super worried, right? And they don't have a lot of anxiety. I mean, this is part of what stops us from doing the wrong thing. Obviously not the only thing, because this also stops us from doing the wrong thing. So you can imagine if you're low on these two, but you'd still have this here, this excitability, this need to feel something. I think this would be the system that's maybe more active in psychopathy and sadism. It's the kind of getting pleasure, which is, I mean, dopamine is pleasure. It's a pleasure from experiencing other people's pain or control over other people. If that makes sense? So this model, awesome for all of us. Probably the majority of us in here would be very high in this system. Threat focus. So that's a lot of us anxious worrywarts who I'm not labeling anyone in here, but I know for me, it's the overthinkers, the people who are very conscientious and worry a lot. This would also be Rick here, high here. And I know for me, I'm high here too, because I am very excitable and very driven. As you know, I do lives nearly every day now, and that's this drive system. I love to get a dopamine fix, and I'm very much a dopamine seeker. That's ADHD probably related as well. But yeah, like I you all know, I love my junk food. I love anything that's fun, and I binge on things. Yeah. Yeah, USA Libertarian. That's a really good point. Definitely. So what USA Libertarian is saying is that possibly, again, they're low, which is interesting because I'm also low on dopamine, right? A lot of people who have ADHD, we struggle with our dopamine system, and that's why the medications are around dopamine. But yeah, so they could be low on that. And then this system is low, and then this system is low. And so they're basically seeking dopamine, but they need to seek it in a way that's much more extreme, I suppose, than how we would. And so for the rest of us, so, I will do a lot. I'll be driven to, go get my cheeseburger, and do those sorts of things, and they'll give me pleasure, and I'll continue to kind of focus on that stuff. But I wouldn't take it to the next level, because this system here is large too. Now, what usually in a lot of us, I guess internalizes people who suffer from anxiety and depression, this system is large when it comes to caring for others, but it's small when it comes to caring for ourselves. So I'll often say it's like a heart that's lopsided. So for a lot of us, it's like, I want to help everybody else, but I'm not actually soothing and calming myself a lot of the time. So compassion focused therapy is around, really getting these into balance, making sure that this here, gets a lot more airtime than this particularly. So yeah. You're a libertarian. They would be higher order. This one here is more that sort of real basic, survival mechanism. Oh, sorry, Data. Is it a little bit too small? I don't know if I can make it bigger. But I will put a link actually to it. Let me put a link to this person's website because I use this all the time with my clients. It's a great visual. So what I'll do is I'll pop that in the chat now, and then I'll pop it in the comments as well. But I'll also read it for you in a sec. So let's pop that in there for you first of all. And it says, it's a content, safe, soothe. So I call it the compassion system. So it's non-wanting and affiliative focus. So it's like your attachment focused. It's safeness and kindness. So it's compassion towards others, compassion to self, soothing, calming, resting. So it's all about, yeah, like looking after ourselves and others. No, Charles, no, she's not blind. She's got allergies. Dita's got allergies. So yes, sorry, Dita. I hope that helps. But definitely check it out anyway. Compassion focused therapy is something I would recommend everybody look at. It's not necessarily a standalone therapy, but a lot of the principles from it are super, super useful in terms of how we can oh, sorry, you were saying libertarian. I'll take that down. But yeah, I find it really useful. And if you guys want to learn more about it, Paul Gilbert, he's a wonderful man in the UK, and I think it would be awesome for you guys to look into it if you want to know more about how to soothe your own nervous system and manage some depression and anxiety. So this would be a great model that we could use, or that could be used, not we, but that could be used to support someone like Regalin. So I love this model. Okay, doesn't get enough airtime either. It sort of it doesn't get seen as often as some of the other more dominant therapies, and yet it's awesome, and it has a really great scientific basis to it. Anyway, we've deviated back to clinical psychology because I love clinical psychology, but let's go back to forensic. So share this tab instead. So yeah, so I guess what we would see if we did a Venn diagram of sadism and psychopathy is we'd see a lot of overlap. So I would imagine that I don't know that there's a huge difference between them, but sadism is more about the deliberate want to, derive pleasure from pain, whereas a psychopath can act cruelly but doesn't necessarily gain pleasure from it. So I think if you think about the psychopath that might, commit armed robbery to get resources. Now, they may not go out there to hurt people, but they just don't really care if they hurt people alongside that, if that makes sense. Whereas a sadist isn't just going to do an armed robbery to get the resources, they are enjoying the inflicting of pain on someone else. So, if that makes sense, sadism has that little bit more of an even sort of stronger nefariousness to it, I suppose, in a way, which is interesting, I thought, because I always sort of think, most of us go psychopath's the worst thing. Of course, I'm not saying that either of them are mechanisms that, not mechanisms, I guess, personality types that we would want to have, I suppose. Charles was asking before, is it nature or nurture? I think some of the research suggests that there is actually genetic differences, but I think nurture is also going to play a part here too, as well. So I think that, we're born maybe more with a propensity towards, empathy or the alternate. But I think that with the right care and support, we could certainly move that from one extreme more towards the middle. So yeah, so I think there are people who will always be natural empaths. I have my beautiful little boy, one of my boys. All my kids, my two boys and my niece, they're all very sensitive, lovely kids. But one in particular, he is just so palpably affected by pain. So he will see a homeless person on the street, and he will say, oh, I just want to buy that person a house. And even the other day, we got the Santa letters kit, and I'm like, oh, look, we've got Santa's address here. And he said, oh, mummy, we can send some presents to Santa for the kids that don't have very much. And, he's consistently like that. Like, he just is so reactive to other people in need and pain. It's just a beautiful, beautiful quality. And I think it's just so hardwired and inbuilt in him. Whereas my I've seen plenty of other kids who are sweet and sensitive, but there's a little bit more of a self-focus, which I think is actually a good thing. I worry sometimes about my oldest son because he is so selfless that I can see him being taken advantage of by others. So Yeah, very, very sweet boy. Super sweet, but definitely a candidate for mental health concerns if we don't help him to set boundaries. So yeah, feels high levels of guilt and worry and all of those things, and definitely follows in my footsteps with some of those OCD traits. So also interesting because I want you to think about that when it comes to Rick, and we will talk about that. Rick's somebody who's suffered anxiety since childhood, and that can often be an indicator of high sensitivity and empathy, as Ash, Mel, and I said on the panel as well. So, a sense of accomplishment, TJ, for BTK. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the sadism part, so if we go back to our sadism side, which I've got up on the screen, need for control and dominance is part of it. It isn't just about the infliction of pain. It's about the control, the humiliation. So if we look at this, these are the central kind of components of sadism. So control, cruelty, callousness. Oh, hey, see-through. Good to see you. Don't worry, you can catch up. You can catch up and just join our discussion now. Like, we're only actually on the second of my slides that I prepared. So you're absolutely welcome. And I don't think you'll find it hard to kind of get into what we're talking about. So we're just talking about sadism, and it's a sadistic crime scene, in my opinion. About 2/3 of the chat think it is, maybe a third don't. But yeah. So for a sadistic person, it isn't just about the infliction of pain and harm on other people. There's more to it. It's, there's definitely sort of some narcissistic elements there, deception. There's a lot going on there, but very low shame and externalized blame. Now, I often talk about the difference between internalizing and externalizing, and it can be used slightly differently in psychology, various different kind of ways. But the way that I like to use it is, an internalizing person is a person who is more prone to blame themselves or look internally for fault or influence in a situation. And an externalizing person is more likely to look at outward factors. So, for example, if I have a fight with John Smith and I are fighting, and we end up falling out. So if I'm an internalizer, I'll start thinking, could I have done things differently? Should I have done something else? Maybe I could have been a bit better like that. And I'd possibly go reassurance seeking and double checking. And I might still sometimes leap into, no, John Smith's mean and it's his fault. But I'll always inevitably come back to also my own sense of shame and worry and guilt about what I might have done. And let's say John Smith is an externalizer. He wouldn't even entertain the idea that he did anything wrong. He would say, well, Amy, she's just a bitch. She did that to me. It's her problem. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. Now, we all do a little bit of internalizing and externalizing. John's a pretty good guy, Joe. You like John? You want John in here? So I guess we both do a bit of it. We all do a little bit of externalizing. So just because you've ever done that doesn't mean that you're an externalizer, but it's about the rigidity of that. So if that's all you ever do, and I guess we've all probably met people like this. I'm sure we have. Charles doesn't like John. John is not a real person, guys. So we do not need to have an opinion on John. That's why I picked a very generic name, John Smith. I'm sure we've all known some John Smiths in our lives, but not going to label anyone as a John. There you go, Karens and Johns. The names that we use. Do you guys talk about Karens over in the States as well? But yeah, I don't know. We have that term here, a Karen. Anyway, let's go back to what was I saying? So yeah, we all externalize at times. So if I have an argument with one of you guys, is there going to be a part of me that wants to see that you were wrong and did the wrong thing, even if you didn't? Yes, because that's a protective mechanism. But it's the rigidity of our defense mechanisms that leads to, I guess, pathological kind of personality issues. So if I sort of think, well, John was really mean to me, so he deserved it, and then I think, but maybe I also could have done this. It's the fact that I can kind of balance both and kind of find a middle ground in the end. Not a middle ground as in like I'm at fault, he's at fault, because sometimes it may be John's more at fault or I'm more at fault, but the fact that I can kind of bounce between those perspectives, that's the flexibility that we want. But what we see on the extreme end of each continuum is where we're seeing pathology. So On the extreme end of externalizing, it's I don't care about anybody else. They're always in the wrong. I'm not bad. I don't need to be introspective or self-aware at all. It's never my fault. And on the extreme end of internalizing, we'd have what I would see Rick probably fitting into based on what we know, which is the extreme end of I'm the problem. I shouldn't do the wrong thing. And that's where we get that extreme guilt. Now we see that a lot in people with anxiety, depression, and certainly with OCD. Now, again, not saying that all people with anxiety and depression and OCD are internalizing dominant and rigid in that, but it is quite common, particularly in the scrupulosity OCD that I like to talk about. Okay. All right, guys. Hope that was helpful. So these are some of the traits. So anyone here ticking these traits? Anyone feeling like maybe they're ticking the traits here for this trait cluster? I'm only joking. No one is, right? I can already tell from the chat and how you guys are talking. Nobody in here would be ticking these boxes, right? I think there are people online who would, though, and they would be the people who troll and bully and smear people without really any reason, other than that, they decided that they just think that person's a victim or, not the person that they like or care about. Again, this is not reactive. So, of course, we can all be reactive at times and do things like, lie or be mean to someone and not care about their feelings. It's more about the rigidity of that behavior and the persistence of that behavior over time. Just as one of your personalities is? Well, interesting, actually, that you say that. So what I was saying before in terms of defense mechanisms, anyone who's interested in psychology and has looked into parts models, IFS is one of the dominant ones. Basically, the parts approach is, and the other type of therapy that I love called schema therapy, we talk about the fact that we all do have these different parts of us, and some of them are defender, protector parts. And so some of us will have a part that presents more narcissistically, for example. It's called a narcissistic defense, and we all have it, or not all, but most of us, I would imagine, do. I think we all do. It just may not be expressed as much. So a narcissistic defense is exactly what we were just talking about with John. So it would be saying, well, all of you guys are the problem. It's not me. If you don't come watch my videos and like them, then it isn't because my content's not good. It's because you guys are just too silly to understand it, right? Imagine if that gets screen grabbed and put somewhere now. You know what I mean? That's kind of a narcissistic defense. Now, that doesn't make you a narcissist unless that becomes your primary kind of mode of acting. And so with a lot of us, we all have different parts, but it's the flexibility and the kind of cohesion within the parts that they can kind of work together. And that we call internal family systems is basically saying it's like a family that kind of operate together. But if that family system is not operating together and that narcissistic defense part is front and center, then it can obscure the other parts of us. So it's not multiple personalities. It is, oh, sorry, Charles, are you talking about me? Did you just say, are you finding me being like I'm reading a book? Sorry. I'm dipping too much into psychology now as well, guys. So I know I'm getting off the Delphi topic, but I can see that the people are following. So I hope you're still finding it useful. Of course, anyone who just wants Delphi content without all the additional rabbit holes and psychology aspects, I am going to clip some of those bits. I know you are, Charles. I know you are. No offense taken, of course. Like I said, I really just have not felt offended in this chat. Yeah. Aside from my moment of sensitivity last week, which was just more that I'd been triggered quite a bit in the past of being not listened to and invalidated. So that wasn't necessarily anything anyone particularly said, but it was more just feeling a little bit vulnerable. But no, I don't really feel triggered by anything. You took 3 years of psychology, Charles. There you go. I love psychology. Okay, so let's keep going. So we're going to look at the anti-sadism profile. But before we do that, actually, just for some more interest. So this here is the hair psychopathy checklist. Now, don't go doing this on each other and on your partners. But essentially, this is one of the validated measures or checklists that they will use to assess psychopathy. So let's have a look. So it was developed in the 1970s by Canadian psychologist Robert Hare for use in psychology experiments, and it's undergone revisions, and we've got a revised version. So let's see. How many of these do you need? I can't remember if there's I think you can can you do this on yourself online? No. Yes, you can. There you go, guys. If you want to do it on yourself, just look up the hair psychopathy checklist. I don't think that I have glibness and superficial charm. What do you guys think? No, we won't get you to self-assess or assess me, but these are some of the traits that are most linked to psychopathy. So glibness and superficial charm. So basically being charming, but like really that you scratch the surface, there's nothing underneath. So if I was just like, I love you guys so much, but you can just tell I'm being fake, right? So that's a sort of superficial charm, previous diagnosis of psychopath, well, that kind of figures, egocentricity and grandiose sense of self-worth. So here we're like, I am the best. I know about everything, even things I don't know about. Now, again, that's sort of the narcissism element, but of course you can be narcissistic and not psychopathic as well. And also having a good, like a high sense of self-worth is not the same as grandiose. Okay. Grandiose is when you're basically overstating how good you are at things. And also where you're putting yourself on a pedestal above other people in a way that's unfair. Proneness to boredom, low frustration tolerance. Again, that's not going to be specific to psychopathy because this is also going to be a sign of ADHD, for example. Okay, so it's not on its own an indicator. We're looking at a cluster here. Pathological lying and deception, conning, lack of sincerity, lack of remorse or guilt, very, very core feature here, but also a core feature in sadism and narcissism a lot of the time too. Lack of affect and emotional depth. Again, another core feature. That's probably the stuff that we were talking about before around just not really feeling very much at all. Callous, lack of empathy, parasitic lifestyle. So these are people that will use other people to get ahead and not care about it. Short-tempered, poor behavioral control. So yeah, they can't really kind of control their impulses. Promiscuous sexual relations, a lot of the time, infidelity, cheating, things like that. Early behavior problems. Again, not all children with early behavior problems are a risk for psychopathy, but you will usually do see some of these things linked. Lack of realistic long-term plans, impulsivity, irresponsible behavior as a parent, frequent marital relationships, juvenile delinquency, poor probation or parole risk, failure to accept responsibility for own actions. That's the externalizing we were talking about. Many types of offense. So usually it's multiple different things that they do. It's not just one offense. Drug or alcohol use is not the direct cause of the behavior because that's usually going to be more disinhibited, kind of reactive violence. USA libertarian, it is boredom partly being low in imagination. It could be. You're right. Absolutely. Interestingly as well, because I think high imagination is linked to empathy. I'm pretty sure I saw that. If you've got a good imagination and fantasy world, not obviously a sadistic fantasy world, then most likely you're more on the empathy side of the spectrum. But interesting as well. There's something else I was going to say about this a minute ago. That's okay. It'll come back to me. But yeah, if you look at all of that stuff and all of those traits, you can see, I don't think Rick would tick very many of these here. So I don't think that we would say he's a psychopath. You don't have to be a psychopath, however, to commit, a serious crime. So I'm not suggesting that therefore rules him out, even though, I do believe he's ruled out. The other thing I was going to say is also not all psychopaths commit serious crimes. Right? The majority of psychopaths don't. So we think of a psychopath and serial killer as interchangeable. Would most serial killers be psychopathic? Yes. Are most psychopaths serial killers? No. So psychopathy we would see in a lot of, unfortunately, in a lot of high-profile positions. And I don't know if anyone's come across the lady who talks about her psychopathy online. She's written a book and she talks a lot about what it's like to be a psychopath. It's really interesting. She kind of talks about the thrill seeking and how she's kind of managed it. I think I don't know for sure, but I think she may even be a psychologist herself. So super interesting, right? Okay, so that's psychopathy, but let's also look at sadism. I couldn't get the exact sadism scale. Some of them are behind paywalls and things, but here's some examples of sort of sadistic behaviors. So I was purposely mean to some people in high school. I enjoy making jokes at the expense of others. I've purposely tricked someone and laughed when they looked foolish. Perhaps I shouldn't have, but I never got tired of mocking certain classmates. I love to watch YouTube clips of people fighting. In video games, I like the realistic blood spurts. Oh, that just made me sick thinking about it. I enjoy watching cage fighting or MMA where there's no escape. I sometimes replay my favorite scenes from gory slasher films. I enjoy physically hurting people. I enjoy tormenting people. I have the right to push certain people around. I've dominated others using fear. I mean, what a list there, right? Now, there's probably a few here where people might go, oh, well, like sometimes I do that. If you're interested in fighting or whatever, doesn't mean that you're a psychopath, of course, or sadistic. Some people just actually have an interest in fight. I've had clients before who sometimes actually gravitate to this stuff because they because of their fear, because of the things that they've experienced and in their life. And sometimes it's almost like a confirmation bias. So I've had clients before where they've experienced abuse and mistreatment, and then they go out looking for more videos like that on YouTube, like of police violence and corruption and things. And it's not corruption, sort of more police violence, where the police are hurting people. And it's not because they enjoy that. It's because that is consistent with their worldview that, people are dangerous and people are nasty and they'll do this to you. So there can be different reasons. So we always want to look at the intention behind this stuff and we're certainly also not saying that, if I was mean to someone purposely once, we tick this box. This is more around consistent behavior over time. So the behavioral consistency, the rigidity, and the intention behind things, which is why it's so nuanced, right? People are all capable of evil. People definitely can be, and we can all be capable of doing nasty things. And so, yeah, but it's more, as I said, about the consistency of that. Okay, so that was that one. And then there's one more I was going to show you guys. Oh, it didn't work, I don't think. Let's see. No, not that one. I was going to show you the sexual sadism as well. I'll see if I can get it. Lee says no. So if people went in and out of this behavior, well, there could be. So there's 2 points here. So I guess if we think of like the idea of like parts, and that we all have different parts of ourselves, basically you like a lot of us are not going to have a bully predator part of ourselves. Okay, so first of all, if somebody has an extreme bully predator part of themselves that only comes out sometimes, that would be concerning to me. I would be probably thinking psychopathy more. If we have a part of us that comes out and can be a bit mean or cruel or vindictive or narcissistic, that's more likely a part of us. It's not necessarily a stable personality trait. But you've got to be cautious because, I mean, again, this is where we see the double lives, and this is where we see the people who can present one way in one setting and another in another. So if you are seeing someone with a predatory, sadistic part, I would take that very seriously, even if it only comes out occasionally. But not if, like I said, not if it's just occasionally I'm a bit mean to someone. Yeah, there are lots of successful psychopaths, Charles. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of ideas around, are some politicians psychopathic? I've certainly heard that floated before. So, look, I think if you see this in extreme forms, of course, I would be concerned, even if it doesn't happen all the time. If you're seeing mild, sometimes I'm a bit mean to someone because they hurt my feelings, then probably not. Then that's probably more an angry, protective sort of part of ourselves that just sort of lashes out. Hey, Chester, nice to see you. Yeah, Grammar. So that's what they sort of say. A lot of the most successful people in business and politics, for example, could have psychopathic traits. So the majority of psychopaths, I think it's about 1% of the population, majority of psychopaths are not actually serial killers or committing sort of offenses that end them up in jail. But that doesn't mean that they're not behaving poorly in other settings. Yeah, but there is a reason that they, that sort of behavior can be rewarded in our society, in business and things like that. So it's really important to be mindful of that because sometimes people can have a lot of power and actually have traits that are not pro-social at all. And I think we've all seen examples of that. We won't name any names, but I think we can all see that in the public world. Okay, so This is the sexual sadism. So offender is sexually aroused by sadistic acts. Offender exercises power, control, domination over victim. Offender humiliates or degrades the victim, tortures the victim, engages in acts of cruelty, mutilates sexual parts of the victim's body, has a history of choking consensual partners during sex. Offender engages in gratuitous violence towards victim, history of cruelty to other persons or animals, gratuitously wounds victims, attempts to or succeeds in strangling, choking, or otherwise asphyxiating victims, keeps trophies, keeps records of the offence, carefully pre-plans the offence, mutilates non-sexual parts of the victim's body, engages in bondage and consensual partners with consensual partners during sex. Victim is abducted or confined, evidence of ritualism in offence. So if we look at that list, I think we can see that a lot of those are ticked in the Delphi murders. And interestingly, a lot of those are not ticked in the Wala supposed confession, or the false confession, in my opinion, of Rick Allen. He doesn't describe any of that, does he? So if the scene looks sadistically motivated, but Rick's confession, that most of us believe is a false confession, I know, or many of us do, his confession involves alcohol. You'll remember before, this behavior is not predated by alcohol. He mentions it not being planned. He didn't have the intention of murder. So it kind of goes against some of this pre-planning. He mentions guilt and grief. I know, I'm sorry, Chester, that list was really yuck, wasn't it? Apologies for going into that. That's really pretty horrible. But yeah, I mean, Rick doesn't really tick any of these boxes in his confession to Wala. But I hate even saying confession because I don't think it is. Okay, so let's move on from that because that was a pretty horrible list. I agree. And let's go to the inverse, the opposite. Okay, so we're going to call this the anti-sadism profile, the inverse pattern. And to me, this is Rick's trait pattern. Okay, and this is probably the trait pattern of a lot of people in here. So high conscientiousness, guilt proneness. Who in here has that? I know I do. I'm so guilt prone, and I'm like, you can probably tell I'm so conscientious because I'll like correct myself over and over again. Even if I make a tiny error, I'm like, oh no, I got it wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Like even with my subscribers, I was like, well, not all the subscribers are watching. And so then that doesn't really feel like it's truly 1,000 subscribers. I can't celebrate it until I'm getting like 1,000 views on my videos and stuff. Like that's the level of conscientiousness that I have. It's like, it has to be right. And if I did the wrong thing, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done the wrong thing, and I feel so much guilt. Yeah. Grammar. I thought you'd be in that category too. Yeah, I think probably most people in here are in this category. Should we do a poll? Let's do another poll. Okay, give me a sec. Let's end this poll and let's start a new poll. Oh, why is it not letting me do that? It's not letting me start a poll. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay. Do you relate to the anti-sadism profile? So do you relate? Not just Rick, but do you is the question now, guys. Go. Okay, so let's come back to this. So this is the initial reason that I ended up being quite passionate about Rick's innocence, because I just felt like I saw this so early on. Partly from when I say so early on in us actually having information about him. Obviously couldn't see that in the years of the gag orders with not a lot of information about who Rick was. But when we looked at Westcott's testimony and even Wyler's testimony and is it Dr. Martin, I believe, that's the psychiatrist, and then certainly when we look at the interrogation videos, when we look at his relationship with Kathy, and now subsequently hearing from Kathy as well, just so many of these things were kind of indicative to me, at least. So we can already tick the second one, internalizing style. Now, that doesn't mean that someone with depression and suicidality couldn't be sadistic and psychopathic. I'm not suggesting that that is absolutely mutually exclusive. However, I suppose when you see more of a depression in people with the sort of darker qualities, hey Mustang, good to see you. I was wondering where you were. Nice to see you. You'll have to do the catch up of the hour and a half we've already done. I think you'd really love this information, even though some of it's a bit disturbing. I know that you're interested in psychology, so yeah, lovely to see you. So what was I saying? I think that depression and suicidality can occur in people with a darker kind of dark triad, they call it, kind of characteristics. Generally speaking, like let's say if it was sort of a malignant narcissist, it'd be if there's like a real narcissistic injury. So this might be the person who is convicted of a crime that they committed, and they can no longer have any power or supply, and therefore they just don't want to be there anymore. And I think we all know some famous cases of people who have taken that way out after a crime. But with Rick, we see the suicidality throughout his adult life. We see this depression throughout his life. It doesn't seem triggered by anything in particular. Again, I don't know the research directly, but we can look into that. But overall, again, we're not saying one of these in isolation is an indicator that he couldn't have done this, but when we look at them together, we can kind of start to create a better picture as well. So remember, none of it's black and white. Same with the sadism. You could have one of those traits. It doesn't mean that you're ticking the box as a sadistic offender. So high conscientiousness, though, we see that in Rick, don't we? Because he's so worried about doing his work. He's so worried about getting it right. He's so worried about not living up to the expectations. And we see this. We also hear it. I was listening to his first interview again this morning, and I will do a video breaking that down. But, he talks about why he didn't like management at Walmart, and he talks about not being able to be completely involved with the customers. It was more about, ticking boxes and numbers and, sales and things like that. And he definitely seems like he's much more oriented towards serving customers. Now, you could say, is he just trying to be socially desirable? It just all comes out very naturally for him. Another comment that he makes is around the car, where he says, he wanted Kathy to have the newer car most of the time. There's just a few like indicators. They're not huge, and in isolation, I don't want to kind of overreach on them, but the overall picture, and I know that Mel and Ash had the same picture, even just from the bits they saw, is a picture of someone who cares about other people, right? Even when he's on the phone to Kathy, that first phone call we hear before the confessions, and he's sort of saying to her, are you okay? I want you guys to move on if you need to, like he's both desperate because, he wants to not feel alone, but he's also trying to give her permission through that desperation because he doesn't want to hurt her. So again, I don't know Rick. I haven't met him. I haven't spoken to him at depth, but that's the sense I get from, what we have seen of him and how he's described by the people who love him, which I know people could say is biased, but I know there's been a few people who said that they've actually spoken to him, people in this community who've said they've spoken to him and, communicated with him while he's been incarcerated and have nothing but positive things to say about him too. So look, I don't have verified, factual evidence of what he is like as a person, but certainly that seems to be how he presents. It sort of sounds like that's how Andy Baldwin also describes him as well. So he's ticking the first box. We know guilt proneness. I mean, whether we believe the confessions or not, we see a lot of guilt and a lot of pain associated with what he's saying. We see him worrying even prior. He'd always worried about not doing the right thing, about, in terms of like, financially, if we think about what Westcott said. So there's a lot of this going on here. Oh, hey, Adrienne, you would love this, Adrienne, the topic that we're talking about now too. So you have to go back and watch it. I know this would be right down your alley. Another empath coming into our chat, lovely Adrienne, which reminds me, I'm going to make you my mod, Adrienne. I've been meaning to do that for a while. So let's do that too. There we go. Adrienne is a beautiful empathic person. So I think she would fit in this anti-sadism profile too. So you can straight away, Adrian, answer the poll and put yourself in the yes category. So it looks like 71% of people in this chat think that they're the anti-sadism profile. The others who don't, I think you're probably being hard on yourself, because I'm pretty sure that the others wouldn't be. And I haven't seen anyone who is in this chat and who has operated in good faith in this community, which is most of the people that come and actually actively participate in this channel. I've not seen any of them show indicators of sadism. We can all be mean sometimes, and we can all sometimes let our emotions take over, but I think underneath it, I feel like we're all kind of like this. And anyway, okay. Oh, look, I mean, we can't all tick this. I mean, I don't have a long-term stable relationship romantically. I have, but I don't right now. But I have had long-term stable relationships with friends, with family, a super close relationship with Nana G, as you guys know. That's why she lives with us. So yeah, and I think some people in here have formed long-term stable relationships even within this community. I've certainly seen, you know, some ally kind of groups where, yeah, like for ally pairings, I suppose, of people who are really loyal and caring towards each other too. So long-term stable relationships. So yeah, Rick ticks that box. He has good relationships with his mum. He has a good relationship with his wife, of course. He has a good relationship with his daughter, according to her testimony, with his sister, and with his stepdad. And it seems as though from Kathy's interview as well that he was close to her brothers as well. One of her brothers did pass away as well, which was really sad. But the people that he invests in, he has stable relationships in. So despite being a bit more socially anxious and avoidant, according to Kathy, and also according to Westcott's testimony, he does have stable relationships that are very loving and loyal. Shame sensitive, fear of letting others down. We know that from his phone calls. We know that from his history as well. So he ticks that box. Low dominance, discomfort in authority roles. Tick. You know, I don't particularly hold a lot of weight in the dependent personality disorder diagnosis. Of course, I can't speak to that with certainty because I haven't assessed him. But yeah, I don't think that that's necessarily the strongest indicator that I see from what I've read in the publicly available testimony and information. But dependent personality disorder is inversely related to these sorts of crimes and violence. So regardless, we know he doesn't like to be in an authority role. It feels too much. It's stressful. He's not a dominant person. And yeah, there's no indications that he ever has been. So this is really, really key, because when we're going to compare him to some of the other adult onset offenders, we're going to see that that's actually very different to what we see in someone like Russell Williams. Okay, I'm going to finish up soon, guys, because this is going extra long. But thank you for sticking with me and working through this. And anyone on the replay, I hope that you're enjoying it as well. Okay, so warmth, caretaking, animal bonding. So what do we know about Rick? I'll never forget the exhibit, the photo of his tool bench, and has a plush cat on it. Right. We know that we have the picture of him with his cat. I love that picture. He's got a beautiful, big, fluffy cat like Kai. The family are animal lovers. They're cat people, right? We know that he shows a lot of warmth towards Kathy and towards his mum when he's in the calls. We know that he also is described, I've heard him be described as friendly and nice. Now, again, can that be superficial? Yes, it can be in sort of like, I guess, you know, in his work role, but not so much with his intimate relationships. Now, one thing that people will then say is, well, Kathy could just be naive and covering for him. But this is where it falls apart. First of all, I don't think Kathy presents as someone who's naive. I think she presents as someone who, you know, is very brave, resilient. And I mean, the way she presented in that documentary showed us that she is a strong woman, right? And then I feel like the same people that will say, oh, Kathy's just covering up for him, she's been deceived by him, are the same people that say the only reason Rick came forward was because Kathy made him. That doesn't work, does it really? I mean, yes, I know we have different parts of ourselves, but I kind of think if he's dominating her so much and manipulating her so much that he's making her believe that he's not guilty, then he could have manipulated her into saying, I'm not going to go to the police too, couldn't he? Do you know what I mean? Like, this is where the inconsistencies sort of fall away. And I definitely agree that people can have nuance and be different in different circumstances, but it just doesn't add up, does it? So I get the sense that Rick is not the dominant person in the household, nor is Kathy. It just seems like they both actually have a really collaborative relationship. And it seems like it's, a good quality relationship from everything that we've heard. We see warmth in the way that he speaks to Kathy. As I said, we see caretaking from both sides. Again, this is where I don't always agree with the dependent personality idea. Again, I might not be seeing all aspects of him. We're just going on what we see, but I hear caretaking in the way that he responds to Kathy. He also talks about liking to take care of the customers. We have the anecdote, which I believe is true, though, that he printed the photos for the memorial for free. And again, people say, oh, was that him inserting himself? Well, no, because he didn't really insert himself in any other way other than coming forward and saying he was on the trails and maybe printing these pictures. So I don't think that's insertion. I think that's actually care. I think he actually cares because he has a daughter and he can imagine the pain. They do seem like a great match, Lisa. I think that's so rare, isn't it, when two people find each other and have, that degree of loyalty and bond, but they definitely seem like they do. Conflict avoidant. Well, guess what? Conflict avoidant is a double tick, isn't it? Because we see he does not become aggressive in those interrogation videos. I don't care what McClellan says in his arguments against Rick. I don't see Rick as the aggressive person there. I think he's incredibly patient. I always quote the line where he starts to realize that they're kind of setting him up for it, where he says, I don't want to doubt your integrity of anything. The only little microaggressions that occur are like at the end when he says to Mullins, what does he say? I forget, but he insults Mullins as he leaves. And I don't think many of us would blame him. And he gets quite angry at Holman when Holman has basically continued to persist in, this really aggressive questioning and is also lying. And he's doing all of this in front of Kathy. So it's more a defending kind of anger as opposed to, just a general aggression as well. Yeah, yes, I agree. Like they're both dependent on each other. Yeah, Rick's worrying about Kathy, Kathy's worrying about Rick. They just both, really love each other so significantly, I think. And I know also Kathy said in her interview that he would text her every day and say, how much he loved her as well. So yeah, definitely very close. I'm not sure if Hermit-like is the anti-sadism profile, so I probably would take that out. I think I think, as you know, I use ChatGPT to help me organize my thoughts. I think Hermit-like, it's not necessarily the anti-sadism profile. We do see people with sadism who could have Hermit-like lifestyles, so that's not necessarily. But what we do see is he's conflict avoidant and pro-social. And he's not about trying to control other people and have dominance. And in terms of a double life, hey, Fourpair, it's nice to see you. Well, people could say, well, he did have a double life, but they're basically doing this sort of backward deduction. Well, because he committed this crime, then he had a double life. But we're really looking at him without focusing on what the crime elements are, because that's one particular piece of information that we're not even sure of that he did or didn't do. And this is where profiling can go wrong when we profile based on what the crime looks like, because then we're basically working backwards from the answer that we already think we have, and that's where bias comes in. And ChatGPT did this actually when I was first talking about this with ChatGPT. It was like, well, Rick does show signs of sadism, and they were all linked to the actual crime. But if he didn't commit the crime, were there any other signs of sadism? Because that's what we're looking at here. We're not looking at was he sadistic in the crime? Unless you can prove 100% that the person did the crime, then you can say, well, yes, clearly those are indicators of sadism. But in this case where we have circumstantial evidence, and a lot of us are not convinced that he he committed the crime, we need to look more at pre-existing background factors and behavioral factors aside from the crime. And I'm going to do that the same when we look at BTK and Russell Williams and some of the other offenders we'll compare it to in this series. Okay, so what clusters with sadism and what clusters against it, you can see here. So I think most of us probably fit on this side rather than this side. We don't see any history of conduct problems or early paraphilia in Rick. Again, people can say, is he hiding it? Well, he's hidden it pretty well, because most offenders, even if they've hidden it well, when they actually get brought to justice, then stories come out. Then we start to find out more. And that hasn't happened with Rick. We're now 3 years and 1 month nearly into his incarceration and into him being known by the public, and yet nobody's come forward to suggest any of this, right? Nobody's come forward to suggest this. Disinhibition and thrill seeking. Does Rick Allen seem like a thrill seeker? He seems like a homebody. That's not thrill seeking. We don't see low conscientiousness from him. He cares so much. We don't see antagonism. No one's come forward to describe him as being someone antagonistic and arguing for the sake of arguing. So he really fits much more in this category here, which are the protective inverse traits. So luckily, none of us are likely to be late onset offenders of crimes like this. So sadistic violence doesn't just appear at age 44. It just doesn't. And I don't care which cases we bring up, there is always indicators underneath. Now, they may have indicators that are not criminal activities, but there would be indicators. Sadism is a stable characteristic. Yes, Adrienne, I would probably agree with you on that. Same. And that's what I said as well. Adrienne's saying, except for being a dude, I feel like I'm Rick. I felt the same. And that's why I've been so passionate about advocating for him. He reminds me so much of myself and my clients as well. So, yeah. The typical sadism trajectory. So sadism is going to be a more stable quality, like psychopathy. It's not going to suddenly appear at age 44. So if we think of even just like the personality disorders, the ones that are, that we all know about, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, dependent personality disorder, they're not diagnosed prior to the age of 18. And part of that is because we need to see persistence over adulthood, right? So 18, sure, if the first offense was at 18, okay, even if the first offense is at 29, like BTK, that's still more in line with what we would expect. And the reason for that is because people may manage their urges in less deviant ways earlier on, and then they escalate. So we will talk about that a little bit more in future forensic unicorn discussions about escalation and repetition. So essentially though, it comes up here anyway. So there you go. Already thought ahead. So repetition and escalation are core features. A single late onset sadistic double homicide with no history is forensically bizarre. Now, people could say, well, has he done other crimes before? Do we just not know about it? We haven't heard anything. There are no indicators whatsoever of anything like this from anyone. Okay. And then on top of that, he was free for another 5.5 years after this offense if he committed it. Why did he do nothing else after that? Because generally speaking, you are going to get repetition and escalation. The thrill of the sadistic offense doesn't last forever. We didn't really get to it yesterday, but also another point that people will say is, insertion, into the crime, that's the reliving of it. First of all, his searches were not indicative of him reliving the crime. He was searching the news in Delphi. I think he searches the murders maybe once or twice, but it's not like he's searching the intimate details of the murder. He's basically searching for news in Delphi. And realistically, all of us here would have much worse search histories in relation to this case, right? There's no indication that he was inserting himself in the case. And realistically as well, not actually a common thing that perpetrators insert themselves. We hear about it because it's interesting when it happens, but it's actually not super common. It's pretty rare. I don't think that there's any indications that he was reliving the fantasy of this crime. And if anyone believes that the round in his hope box was, his little trophy, I mean, really? I think there would be other trophies that he would have, right? Like, I don't mean to mock it too much, but like, come on, a round that matches an unspent round at the crime scene. First of all, ridiculous to me that would be considered a trophy, because he's keeping evidence of the one thing that can physically tie him to the scene of the crime, the accidental dropping of a bullet that wasn't actually used in perpetrating the crime. Doesn't make sense, does it? So what trophy does he have? I mean, they searched his house. He was completely unaware they were going to search it. So where is he hiding all these trophies? Because nothing was found, right? So, yeah, we're not seeing any indicators of this. I know people will say, then they'll quote, he's a sex addict. Why? Because he said that to Wala while he was psychotic. Like, come on. That's not evidence. He has seen multiple doctors over many, many years. He's been hospitalized for psychiatric issues. Nobody else saw this deviance. He's never mentioned it before, but he mentions it to Wala while he is psychotic and decompensating in custody. Like, it's very different to what we would expect. Okay, so here's our anti-sadism checklist. It's not a validated checklist, everybody, but keep it in mind, and keep it in mind for future relationships. If you see these indicators, they are good indicators of human beings that are going to probably treat you well. So warmth and affection, tick. Long-term stable attachments, tick. Guilt proneness, well, I'm definitely prone to the guilt. Yes, USA Libertarians you're going to win the comments of the week. USA Libertarian. This one's such a good one. I want to commemorate accidentally leaving evidence. So funny. Totally with you on that. Yeah. So yeah, look at this list as much as you like. Take a little screenshot of it. I'll actually remove the comments so you can have a look. I'm going to try and update and put a lot more stuff on the website. I've been a bit more focused on making the videos rather than updating the website, because I think the videos get more engagement than wanting to read this. As Diana will say, people don't want to read things, they'd rather hear them. But yeah, this list is a good thing to look at. It's interesting, actually, even as I look at this, I'm like, I probably should have looked at this with some of my relationships. I don't think that I've been in a relationship with anyone sadistic, but I think some of this is also the anti-narcissist checklist too, or narcissism checklist too. So yeah, I'd probably be looking for this, guys. Now remember, some of these in isolation do not make someone a sadist or a narcissist. We're looking at a pattern though. Okay, I think that is it for today, guys. So we are going to get into using this checklist to look at other offenders that are compared to Rick, or Rick's compared to, like Russell Williams and Thomas Bruce, who's the Catholic supply store murder perpetrator. And we will look at BTK, even though he's not an adult onset offender, he's the one that routinely comes up. So we'll look at him again as well. You can watch my very old video where I talked about this, I think about a year ago. And every second word is I'm really not confident. That was in the early days. But we'll look at BTK. I'm happy to look at any other offenders. I know a few people have mentioned Rex Heuermann. Of course, he's not yet convicted. So we'll allow him to have the presumption of innocence, but we can certainly still look at him as a person and how he looks different. Yes, USA Libertarian, don't worry, me too. I mean, some of the things I've looked up over the years, I think would certainly make me look very suspicious. I remember my husband, when we were together, I would, I'd look up things and he'd be like, why are you looking that up? Like, just, you have this morbid curiosity, and sometimes it's not. I think like a lot of us have morbid curiosity anyway. I mean, that's why we watch disaster movies, but also it's like for a lot of us, it's like, I want to make sense of this. I want to understand this. I want to know why this happens. So a lot of us are going to have search histories that are quite bizarre. So just hope we're not in the wrong place at the wrong time, because goodness, my search history would be far more bizarre than Rick's. That's for sure. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I hope that was interesting on lots of levels. We talked about, obviously, why I don't think Rick is guilty of this crime, but I think we also importantly talked about sadism in general, and how to look out for it and spot it, and basically to reassure ourselves we're not sadistic. We also talked about compassion-focused therapy. I really want to point you guys in that direction, because a lot of us who fit this category of anti-sadism checklist category, the highly sensitive, internalizers, need more self-compassion. So look into CFT, Paul Gilbert. I'll drop the link for that 3 circles in the comments as well. But I put it in the chat. So yeah, have a look at that. And what else did we talk about? Yeah, I think that's the main thing. Oh, that we think it's that some of us think it's a sadistic crime scene, others don't, but that it's more, to me, it's more consistent with a sadistic offender, which rules out, Rick, I think, and I think it rules out family members too, to be honest. And I think it really points more towards people who would be indicating these qualities in other aspects of their life. And there are some people's names that come up, of course, in this investigation that would be more consistent with the sadism checklist. Just talking about funny searches before we finish up, I always like to do a little bit of a funny story. So when I worked in corrections, I was developing a little handbook, a workbook for the offenders on managing anxiety, and I wanted to get a pic, like just clip art. So I was finding different clip art, and this was in the days before AI as well, or before AI was mainstream. And so I wanted naughty, and I don't even know why I needed a picture of naughty, but I typed in naughty in Google Images, and the images that came up were naughty, definitely. And my colleagues laughed because I got so worried because, of course, everything's monitored when you work in a jail. Like everything you do is monitored, and for good reason. We weren't allowed to look up inmates that we were not treating, so not all of us are unethical in that regard. But yeah, that was an error, and I was like so worried. But it happened as well. I looked up in another workplace. This wasn't in the jail system. I was looking into Carla Homolka, the Barbie and Ken murders. It's a guy called Paul, isn't it? What's his last name? But yeah, you guys will probably know that if you're true crime enthusiasts. I was looking that up, and unfortunately, again, crime scene pictures showed up, and they showed up on my computer at work. And I was like, oh my gosh, if anyone's monitoring what I'm looking at work, like, and I remember my husband being like, well, why were you looking at that at work? And I was like, because we just watched the documentary or the movie on it. And I was like, yes, I'd watched the movie Homolka. And so I was just curious about the case, but I didn't expect that the crime scene pictures would show up. Oh, yuck. Yeah, it was horrible. Anyway. So yeah, be careful what you search, essentially. I mean, yeah, we see all sorts of things when you're searching online, and definitely be careful if you guys are on Twitter, because I have definitely seen the crime scene pictures being on Twitter again yesterday. So just a PSA, I did try to report it, but Twitter just makes everything really hard to report. But yeah, please, look after yourselves, because those photos are devastating. And I know some of us have seen them, and has given us context about the crime, but you don't want to kind of just have that pop up on your screen as you're scrolling. It's very disturbing, and it's so unfair to the girls and their families. Okay, well, thanks everyone. We did that in 2 hours. That was great to see you all, and thank you all for showing up. I know that it's not always the ideal time, so I appreciate each and every one of you. And yeah, really, really loving this channel and the stuff that we're working on together. So thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I will have some more videos up. I'm going to do some short videos that won't be lives, but I might put them up as premieres because I know you guys will like to chat. They're just going to be little snippets of some of the lives we've already done. So probably nothing new, but more just for the people who don't want all the chat and rabbit holes. Thank you. Lovely to see you all. Like, I really appreciate each and every one of you, everyone in the chat today. You guys are just so solid. And if you've got any questions, comments, or even any critiques as well of anything we talked about today, please pop them in the comments. Like, we evolve consistently. So if there's any things that are misinformed or on the right on the wrong track, let me know. Okay. All right, guys. Take care. Bye.